Hello lovely internet friends, my name is Megan. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are doing well. Today I am here with the combined wrap up for the month of May and June. I believe I have around 11 books to talk about. I read 2 of those in May and the rest of them in June. Most of these are romance books, just a heads up if it's not something you like or particularly care about, you might want to skip this one, but if not, we're just going to get right into it. I will be discussing the books in order of when I read them instead of ratings because it's just easier to do it that way when I combined wrap-ups. So the first book I read in the month of May was The Magic Misfits, and this is by Neil Patrick Harris, who is mostly known as an actor. He plays Barney in How I Met Your Mother, which is like my favorite thing ever. This is a middle grade book and it is about this main character who is a young boy. He is kind of in a sticky situation where his family, I believe they have passed away or they have disappeared, and so he lives with his uncle, and his uncle kind of used our main character in order to make money and con people, and he kind of trained him in magic in order to be able to help him con people, and our main character really dislikes it and dislikes the feeling of, you know, being mean to people in a sense, and so he runs away and he finds himself in this town where the entire story unfolds. He meets new friends and new people, and he kind of gets to work on his magic at the same time. Within this book there are like little clues and hints where you can like assemble words and make clues out of the story. It's like a, I don't really know how to explain it, but it's really neat. I would say this is definitely for younger audiences and younger in the middle grade genre as well. I'm not giving this a rating, but I did really have fun with it. This is the beginning of a series, and I did buy this like a used copy. So if I can find the other ones for cheap, I would definitely read them. It took me like not even 2 hours to go through this book and read it, and you know, I enjoyed it, but I have nothing else to say. If you guys are looking for recommendations for younger siblings or anything of the sorts, I think this could be like a fun one, but maybe not the best book as an adult. Then we have one of my favorite reads of these 2 months combined, and well, I say that, I mean, I've had a really solid 2 reading months, like rating wise, but I read Scythe by Neil Shusterman, which is the start of his series. I don't know what the series is called. Arc about Scythe. This is book 1. It is a trilogy. All the books are out now, and I feel like this took book 2 by storm a few years ago. I am late to the party, but I'm so glad I hopped on the bandwagon for this one. Scythe is a YA dystopian novel where basically the entire world has surpassed mortality. We have beaten death in a way where people are immortal. We have no sickness, no hunger, everybody has money, like there's no real struggle. People are just free to do what they want to do. If they want to work, it's because they choose to have like kind of, I guess it's almost a hobby, like it has to be a passion, but you don't even have to work. But the real premise of the story is that because we have beaten mortality and everybody is now immortal, there needs to be some control of the population, because obviously the world doesn't work when it's overpopulated. And so there are these people who are Scythes that are like chosen to perform the work of gleaning people, essentially killing them. They are the only ones who can do so, and they hold extreme power in the society. There's a lot of rules in the Scythedom, and essentially the story follows 2 young teenagers, 1 boy and 1 girl, and we follow their story as they are chosen to be Scythe's apprentice, and one of them will essentially become a Scythe and become immortal until they decide that they no longer want to be part of the world. And it's really a story about kind of morally gray characters and a society where clearly even if people have beaten mortality, there's still issues. There's also issues of if there's no time constraint, how people kind of become lazy and our goals aren't as oriented, and you don't have the same will when life is in a like increased span of time. Obviously there's a lot of discussions in here as well as an action-packed story. I love this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and I bought the rest of the trilogy to read it because everything about this was interesting. The characters were complex, the world is really complex, but also really, really interesting to read about. I just found myself blowing through this book. I was so invested in the stories and the characters. Both of them are kind of likable but unlikable at the same time, in my opinion. I think I like the female main character in this a little bit more than the male, but it's just something that will make you think so long after you finished reading this book. I think about this book constantly, and I read it at the beginning of May, so I would recommend this if you still haven't read it. I was kind of hesitant because it's a dystopian, but I fell in love with this book for sure. The next book I will be talking about is the first book I read in June, and also my favorite book of the year so far, which I talk about also in my mid-year book free get tag, which I'll put in the cards. But that book is Beach Read by Emily Henry. As you can see, I had a wild time reading this one. I just adore this book to pieces. I think I might actually make a full book talk about this one if you guys are interested, because I feel like I have so much to say even though it's just a romance book. This book follows January and Augustus, but only from the point of view of January, and their relationship, these two characters' relationship dates back to college because they went to the same college. Both were in like creative writing or English or some sort of major, and January and Augustus were always rivals, but it was mostly one-sided, where January could not stand Augustus. Did I call him August? It's Augustus. Because everything she did, he kind of one-upped her, and that went throughout their writing careers. Both of them became published authors, but when January made it to the New York Times bestsellers, Augustus would like one-up her and like be increased in the ratings. And there's a lot of discussions in this book about being a female in the creative industry and how being a male kind of puts you in a position where you have increased opportunities and all that kind of stuff, which is great. But the story really takes off when January needs to go empty this cottage house that was her dad's before he passed away, and we learn more about her familial relationships that are kind of a little bit broken. And Augustus is actually her next door neighbor. Both of them are in writing slumps, and so they decide to exchange genres. She kind of writes women's fiction, romance novels, and he writes literary fiction, kind of gruesome books, and so they swamp genres. They start talking because of that, and they take each other on writing dates where January recreates romantic dates to help him write his novel, and he takes her on interviews with cult members or ex-cult members and all that kind of stuff, so she can see kind of a darker side. He doesn't really believe in happily ever afters, and you kind of learn why throughout the book. And January used to believe in happily ever after, so she kind of shows them the other side of it. It's a lot heavier than just a romance book. There are discussions of relationship, family ties, and just societal expectations, and just so many things in here. It's absolutely incredible. The writing is phenomenal. There's so many things to make you reflect. I had all sorts of emotions while reading this. I was sad, I was happy, I was just so alive when reading this book. Like, I had never really shown so much like physical reaction to a book. My boyfriend was literally like, you keep reacting to this, like you seem like you're really enjoying yourself, and it was just such a great feeling reading this one. So I really, really do highly recommend this if you guys were even in the slight like interested about this book. Read it. Then I read a graphic novel, and that is the Tea Dragon Festival, which is the sequel to the Tea Dragon Society? Yeah. I don't have much to say about these graphic novels aside from the fact that I absolutely adore the art in this. I think the stories are very adorable as well. I love the tea dragons in this, and this was a great continuation. I guess it's almost more like, it's more like a companion-ish in my opinion than like a direct continuation of the novel or the graphic novel, but I just really love this. I don't really have much to say about these stories. They're very adorable, they're wholesome, would be great for all ages, from children to adults. It's just a great art piece to have, in my opinion. Like, it's great to have in your collection because the artwork is so stunning, and it's fun to just go revisit some pictures in here from time to time. I love the illustrations. I don't really know how to review this kind of thing because it's mostly just soothing for me. It's not like something I'm really invested in the story. It's just looking at the pictures and reading the words is calming. I like the overall experience when reading these. So yeah, we'll be picking up the third volume when that one comes out. The next one I want to talk about is a book that I don't physically own. I read it on my Kindle. It's called Theirs for the Night. I don't remember the author, but again, it will be in the picture I post. I'm not sure how to review this one. Like, I'm not giving it a rating because it's not a genre that I'm accustomed to reading. This is more of a smut book than a romance novel. I believe it's Riley Marie who read this book, and it came to my attention that way, and it's something I was curious about trying. Not sure how much more I'm going to read in that genre because it's not something I'm 100% invested in. But this one follows a girl who goes to this bar, and she's kind of down on her luck. Life's not really going her way, and I believe she has like a few financial issues, and her friend kind of takes her out to change her mind and that kind of stuff. And once they get to the bar, she like connects with this boy, like they make eye contact, and then the boy approaches her but with another boy, and then it's basically them, the three of them going home together that night. It's not something I really know how to review. Like, it was fine, it was smutty, it was really well written for what it is, like 100%, and it is engaging. I just have an issue when people don't necessarily have a connection before engaging in like relationships. Like, that's something I value very much, and so it's hard for me to really 100% enjoy these kinds of scenes when I don't feel a connection other than a physical connection. So I don't really know what to say. It was enjoyable, again, for what it is, but I just wanted to mention that I did read that. If you guys have recommendations maybe about something that there's a little bit more like a novella or something where there's a little bit more connection, I would be interested in that. Or if you know any booktubers I could look at. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that one. Then we go into a few rereads, the first one being Breathe by Abby Glines. I'm not really rating my rereads, but I did enjoy this a lot. The first time I read it was years ago, and I really enjoy this series. I never read it to its full completion. There are 9 books in this series. It's a young adult, or I guess new adult mostly, romance series, and each one follows a different person in the Seabreeze community. This is my favorite that I've read, and I've reread it so many times on my Kindle as a physical book. Like, the pages are actually yellow. I've owned this for so long, and I reread it so many times. But this follows Sadie, and her mother has never been like the best mother figure. She had Sadie but never really took care of her, and now her mother is actually pregnant again with another man's baby. The man has actually left the scene, so it's basically just Sadie and her mom. Sadie is 17 years old and basically taking care of her pregnant mother. The story really takes off when her mother actually cannot go to work anymore, or so she says, because of her pregnancy. And so Sadie takes it upon herself to go to where her mom was hired and try to get the job for herself for the summer in order to be able to save up money and get ready for when the baby will arrive. Sadie manages to get the job, and she realizes that the job is actually at this really rich and famous rock star's house. He's called Jack Stone. Their story intertwines when they obviously meet because she works there. He usually doesn't date anyone but famous people, but they intertwine, get to know each other, and it's kind of like their story. I love it. It is really tropey in like the I'm not like other girls and all that kind of stuff. But if you guys are looking for a fluffy, summery read, this series is definitely it. This has like a celebrity trope. It has just so much fun stuff. I read this not even in a day. This flies by for me every time. I really love Abby Glines' writing. If this isn't for you, she has so many other series, but I highly recommend checking her out. The next book I read, again, another reread, and that is When It's Real by Erin Watt. I love this book. It makes me so freaking happy. I just cannot stop smiling when I read this. It's just so fun, you guys. This is another new adult romance where our main character is 17 and the boy is also 19 years old, so it's very similar to Breathe in that sense. And this is basically the story of this famous I guess he's like a rock star called Oakley Ford, but he has a very bad press image. He's not doing too well. He's kind of rebellious and, you know, not making the best moves for his career. He slept around, he doesn't really care, and he really desperately wants to work with this one producer, but that producer thinks Oakley is too immature and won't have anything to do with him. Oakley desperately wants to work with him because he's the best, but also because he's kind of like in a creative slump where he hasn't put out an album in a few years. So his press team actually works the idea of him dating a normal, regular girl so that it can kind of downplay his image a little bit and make him look more accessible, more normal. And the story really takes off when our female main character is hired for that job. She needs the money because both her parents have passed away and she wants to put money aside for her both her younger brother's college funds. She takes the job. It's basically fake dating and kind of like hate to love romance where, again, there's the celebrity trope. I love this book with my entire being. I loved it the first time around and I love it just as much the second time around. I recommend this book a lot. It's so good, so fun, and definitely a good beach read. And my last reread for this month was actually The Heartbreakers by Ali Novak, which I feel like is really underhyped. This is obviously an older book. I don't even remember when this was published, but it's a Wattpad novel turned into an actual novel, and I love this book. This is the first in a companion series. The second one is also out. It is called Paper Hearts. The third book is actually being like released on Wattpad, and the author, I actually asked her if it was going to be like physically published, and she said like the rest of the series will be, so I'm really excited to add those to my collection. The Heartbreakers is such a fun light read, again, that I read in a day. This follows Stella, and Stella is one of 3 triplets, basically. She has a brother and a sister, and they're all twins. She's identical twins with her sister, and basically the story takes off when you learn that her sister is actually sick. I believe she has this type of leukemia, and so she's really stuck in the hospital all the time. Their birthday is actually coming up, and so our main character and her brother decide to go to this signing for the Heartbreakers, the band, where our main character doesn't really like their music. Neither does their brother, but their sister, who is sick, desperately loves their music, and they want to make her have autographed stuff, so they're taking like her t-shirt and stuff for the band to sign. Stella actually has an encounter with Oliver, the main singer for the band, at Starbucks, doesn't realize it's him, and then sees him again in the line and a few other times where they like meet each other. They had flirted in Starbucks, and it's kind of a friendship turned relationship. Stella actually is really into photography and basically gets hired after a few encounters with the Heartbreakers to help make rumors die down that their group is actually going to break up. So she's in charge of taking photography of them and kind of following them and hanging around with them to take genuine pictures and create a blog, and it's following their relationship as well as her friendship with the other boys in the band. I love all of them. I love Oliver and Stella, their relationship. It's just so adorable and wholesome. This one is cleaner than the other two I talked about. Like, there's no like sex scenes or anything in here, while there is in the 2 new adult books. This one is more definitely on the YA side. And we are down to the final 3. The next 3 are actually all adult romances. The first one being Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is what kind of made me spiral into reading a bunch of romance books in a very short amount of time. I love this book, you guys. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Absolutely adored it. This follows Chloe Brown, obviously, and we kind of see her have a near-death accident where a drunk woman almost runs her over with her car. I'm laughing, it's not funny, it's just the way it's told. It was kind of funny. And so Chloe kind of realizes that she hasn't done with her life what she actually set out to, and what she feels like is actually accomplishing something, and so she decides to create a list to get a life. And on this list there's things like go camping, ride a motorcycle, move out, etc., etc. She actually nails the first one, being moving out, and so she moves out into this apartment where Redford, our main male character, is the superintendent. they meet, but they kind of don't like each other. They're both kind of snarky towards each other. The story really takes off when I believe Chloe is rescuing a cat in a tree, and she gets stuck because of her chronic illness. There is great chronic illness rep in here. Chloe's also a plus size main character. She's also black, and it's like the diversity in here is great. But really what happens is that Redford actually sees Chloe in the tree, kind of helps her off, and their relationship kind of starts from there. He actually ends up helping her with the list, and that's how they form a relationship. This was a very healthy portrayal of what a relationship looks like, and very accurate, I feel like, because both of them kind of had their own struggles independently, but together kind of helped each other become stronger people. But also it was realistic in the sense that they both had really real insecurities. Redford actually deals with a past abusive relationship, more emotionally abusive, I would say. So there might be like trigger warnings for that, and Chloe kind of has her own baggage with her chronic illness and how that affects her life, her relationships. The discussions in here were absolutely phenomenal. The writing was gorgeous. I just had so much fun with this book. And the companion novels, because this is like a companion novel series where we're going to follow all the Brown sisters. Take a Hint, Danny Brown actually just released, and it's on my July TBR, which if you have not seen my CANDYLAND Picks My TBR, will be linked in the cards. But I cannot wait to get to that one because I just love this one so much. The angle may have changed. I had a few adjustments to make with my camera, so I'm sorry for that. The next book I have is You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hoggle. I loved this book, you guys. This is another 5-star read for me, another adult romance. This one is a love to hate to love. It is also a debut novel, and I just had so much fun reading this. I posted a picture on my Bookstagram discussing this book as well. The author actually wrote back and said my comment made her day, and I'm just so happy when stuff like that happens. But this book follows our main character Naomi, who is engaged to this boy called Nicholas, but Naomi actually wants to break off the engagement. We follow them with a prologue when they first had their first kiss, and then basically when Naomi wants to rip out Nicholas's heart and probably other parts of him too. She basically has this plan where she is going to try to make Nicholas break off the engagement because she cannot afford to do so, literally, because she's kind of broke and having to repay the wedding would be too expensive for her. She has a lower income, whereas Nicholas is actually a dentist and supports most of their relationship, as well as his parents paying most of the wedding because they are also very wealthy. There's a lot of discussions in here that are very important, one of them being when step parents pay for the wedding, and how she kind of has a crazy mother-in-law, and the mother-in-law wants to be in control of absolutely everything, so that makes a dent in the relationship. There's also the idea of when two people get together, they are both different people. Obviously you start to grow as a couple, but you also grow individually, and sometimes you kind of realize that what one person wants and what the other person wants hasn't actually matched up. Sometimes you can make it work, sometimes the relationship ends, and there's discussions of that and how we evolve as a couple. I just loved the banter, loved the relationship. I loved the Nicholas main character as well, and his actions and his character development. Our main character is kind of snarky, and at times I was like, what are you doing? But it's also part of the premise of this book and of the relationship. This obviously is kind of a toxic relationship at times. Our characters do acknowledge that, so I really did appreciate that. Just the banter and the fun, and I really, really love this. I read this in 2 sittings and just had a blast. The writing is absolutely amazing, and the storyline is hilarious, so would recommend. And the last book, and also a phenomenal book, is The Bromance Book Club by Lisa K. Adams. I gave this, again, 5 out of 5 stars. I feel like every book is getting 5 stars from me this month, but I loved it to pieces. This follows 2 main characters, Gavin and Thea. This is the first in a companion novel series of boys who join a book club to save their marriages and read romance novels, the Bromance Book Club. This one follows Gavin, and we follow his story. It begins when he is in this crusty motel room, drunk off his butt, and his friends come in and they have a discussion. You learn that his wife has asked for a divorce, and we kind of explore the reasons why. Their friends actually bring them to their book club, where Gavin joins and uses a historical fiction romance novel to try to save his marriage. It's a very funny plot, but there's also talks about like toxic masculinity and societal expectations and what it takes to have a relationship and love languages and just all the kind of stuff. A lot of people said like the way the men talk about what they learned from the books maybe isn't the most realistic. I agree, but then again, I think it's trying to like put a message across, and I really loved it, and I didn't really care that it wasn't as realistic as people would think. It's still effective, it's still fun, and I really enjoyed it. I loved Gavin a little bit more than I loved Tia. Gavin is like a sweet cinnamon roll in my opinion, one of my new fictional crushes, I could say. It's also very interesting because Gavin has a stutter, and I feel like that kind of rep, if I call it rep, I guess so, isn't really displayed in a lot of books, especially not in main characters. So there are discussions about how not everyone handles people with stutters as well as they should. Some people try to finish your sentences, some people try to just kind of ignore it or don't look at you like it's something that's so weird and off-putting. And the way Tia, the wife in this book, actually was just very comprehensive, waits for Gavin to finish his stutter and keep going with the talking, and I just really appreciated the discussions and like how some characters try to use it against Gavin and how Tia is very protective of him as well. I just loved everything about this book and will definitely be continuing on with the rest of the series. I just think it's a lot of different topics encompassed in something that is fun and light, and I can really appreciate that in a novel. So these are all the books I read in the month of June. Let me know what you guys have read and really enjoyed this month, or a book you hate that I shouldn't read, and I'll see you soon with another video. Bye guys! Happy reading!